In today's video, we have an 8-member gang who want to get rich quick. It stands as one of the most harrowing criminal cases in recent UK history. The victim, once connected to the criminal underworld, was abducted under the guise of a police arrest. He endured over 12 hours of brutal torture, including electric shocks and burns, all in a bid to extract £500,000 ransom. This meticulously planned crime involved a betrayal by a trusted friend. This is Curios&Spiritual. No deep dives, I'm going to cannonball into this case. We will take a look at the events, the police investigation, Operation Savine, and how it all ended. We go to Hale, Manchester. Hale's an affluent suburb made up of clerical workers, skilled manual workers, celebrities and footballers. It had become a scene of a brutal kidnapping, not of someone who was a rich family or a head of a wealthy company. This was someone who was up to their neck in the criminal underworld. We will call this man Mr. A. But the life now weighing heavy. Mr. A had gotten out. His dealing days, they were over. Now legit, the money he made didn't last long and was gone. He made promises to his family to get out, and he kept them. But sometimes that life you cast aside and let go of will not be done with you and drag you right back in. Sometimes you can portray an image of wealth with the cars you drive, the clothes you wear, jewellery and watches, with a little crown on them. Now what's the advertiser's slogan? A crown for every achievement. I suppose dealing product can be one of those achievements. Mr. A in his mid-30s portrayed this image extremely well, and one of his close friends didn't believe he'd given up the life. Sean Freeman believed his friend Mr. A was still dealing, but decided Mr. A had gone all hush and quiet about it. Sean Freeman had known Mr. A for several years. They were friends who hung out regularly, but this was becoming less and less. Mr. A was just trying to do what he promised his family, a new start, a legit life. But had Mr. A really given up? Word on the criminal rumour mill is that Mr. A was still dealing, and whatever you want to call it, the money coming in, the dough, the dosh, the cheese. Yes, the word was. He was a very cheesy man, and that rumour mill had just put Mr. A into very, very dangerous circumstances. I don't care what anyone says. You have no friends in this game. You have acquaintances, but they'll still backstab you and throw you head first under the bus if it came to it. And Mr. A's friend Sean Freeman would be that guy. Mr. A had gotten rid of his Mercedes and was driving a van. The van must be for moving product. Rumours he was in charge of a transfer of large quantities of cash and product using that van. Sean Freeman believed the rumours about Mr. A. Sean Freeman was broke, but he figured that if Mr. A was kidnapped, they could hold him for ransom. This idea grew until it included 7 others, with acquaintances Nicky Barnes and Delroy Chin. There was now a gang and a plot. But how much money can you get? In the world of kidnapping to ransom, it is something you never normally see on the news, and the reason why is if your loved one's kidnapped, people, if they can, will and always pay. Sean Freeman seen this as easy money. For this they would need a location. A garage would be hired in the back street, Gorton. They would need to monitor his movements. Delroy Chin would put a tracking device on his van. He knew the ins and outs and how they worked, so several were placed. Then the kidnap plan. Then a hit, a time, a capture, a fake arrest with fake police uniforms. A month later, the gang was ready with its plan. In the coming days, Mr. A was followed by the gang in a black Audi, not something that went unnoticed by Mr. A. On Thursday, the 11th of April, 2019, in Hale, outside of Barber's, Mr. A was waiting. He'd been lured to Hale, where he would then go to Parswood Centre with Sean Freeman to eat at Nando's. He was trapped by the kidnap gang as he waited for Sean Freeman. 3 of the gang waited in an Audi watching. Daniel Lowe, Ben Yakobu, and John Bishop were dressed as plainclothes police officers, one wearing a police high-vis. Mr. A was outside the Barber's when he was approached by the 3 fake police officers from the Audi. He told he was under arrest for conspiracy to supply and deal Class A product. Mr. A believed they was the police and went with them to the Audi. The 3 fake police got in, with Mr. A in the back. As the ignition was turned on, Mr. A clocked his own address on the sat-nav. One of the gang quickly switched it off. Mr. A thought it was quite bizarre. Mr. A was handcuffed in the back of the car with 2 of the men, while the driver Daniel Lowe pretended to make calls to an operator. Mr. A said the men discussed going to a number of police stations, including Longsight, Stretford and Clayton, but claimed there was a delay. From his old days in the criminal underworld, Mr. A said he knew Stretford didn't have a custody suite from his past run-ins with the police, and there was no such thing as Clayton Police Station. Mr. A started becoming suspicious. Around 5 or 10 minutes later, a black Volkswagen transporter van pulled up nearby. A man, Mr. A said, got out the back of the van, wearing a balaclava, and other men, the fake police officers, referred to him as Big Dave, and that he was in charge of the others. He came to the back of the Audi and asked for a strap or a gun. Mr. A had a hood put over his head and was then moved to the back of the van, where he was told, "We know who you are and what you do. Get us everything we want and everything will be alright. We know where your wife is, where your mum and dad is. We know where your house is. You know what this is about. Your people have effed my people over." They put a gun to his head and put him in the van and drove for about 30 minutes. The kidnappers' 15-mile journey, they drove Mr. A to a back street in Gorton. Still hooded and handcuffed, they dragged him out the van. Mika Warfall, Ben Yukobu, Nicky Barnes, Daniel Lowe and Michael Atua forcefully held the victim at the building for around 13 hours. The group threatened the victim using an imitation firearm, but later, to show they mean business, to show they wasn't messing, they showed their capability by brutally torturing him, using weapons such as a blowtorch and a taser, in order to scare him into cooperating with their demands. The victim's cries were shielded for 13 hours by a running cement mixer, rotating with water and bricks inside. The gang then contacted a member of the victim's family, and then Mr. A's wife, with Mr. A's phone, and demanded a ransom, which they eventually demanded to be delivered to an address in Birmingham. The ransom demanded would be £500,000, £100,000 in cash, and $400,000 in Class A product. The problem, Mr. A, his family, didn't have it. Mr. A was legit, and being legit, he was now broke. His wife, desperate, contacted the police. Even more of a sign, he was now legit. After receiving disturbing phone calls from the kidnappers using the victim's phone, the victim's wife contacted the police. These calls included threats and ransom demands, giving police a clear indication that this was a live and urgent abduction case. Operation Savine was launched. The victim's mobile phone was a key asset. Police used cell site analysis to trace the phone's location in real time. This technology allowed them to narrow down the area where the phone and likely the victim was situated. Armed with this location data, police quickly deployed surveillance and tactical teams to the suspected area in Gorton, Manchester. The investigation moved rapidly due to the high risk of the victim's life. Officers raided the identified garage, and inside they found the victim bound and severely injured after more than 12 hours of torture. The scene revealed horrifying evidence: tools of torture, including a blowtorch, handcuffs, hypodermic needles, and a cement mixer used to drown out his screams. During the police raid on the Gorton lockup, where the victim was being held, officers arrested 2 gang members who were present and acting as guards. They were Ben Yukobu, 38 years old, and John Bishop, 31 years old. These 2 individuals were found guarding the victim, who had been handcuffed to a chair. Delroy Chin's DNA was found on a balaclava recovered from a kit bag in the rear of the black Audi, which was still in the lockup when police raided it. Also, there was a police high-vis vest. A set of handcuffs and another tracker were also located within the home of Delroy Chin when it was searched. Other members of the gang, including Michael Tua, Nicky Barnes and Daniel Lowe, were not present at the lockup during the raid. They were pursued by Greater Manchester police officers and arrested in May 2019. In April 2019, Mika Wolfall fled the United Kingdom to evade arrest. He was later apprehended in Spain and extradited back to the UK to face charges. Wolfall, aged 36 at the time, was considered one of Britain's most wanted fugitives. He was arrested by the Guardia Civil on Spain's Costa Blanca in October 2020. During the arrest, Wolfall attempted to flee and used pepper spray on the officers before being subdued and taken into custody. A Spanish court remanded him into custody ahead of extradition proceedings. With Mika Wolfall now back on UK soil, the whole 8 of the gang were arrested, charged and remanded into custody. The trial concerning the 2019 kidnapping and torture case in Gorton, Manchester was held at Manchester Crown Court. Specifically, the trial for Sean Freeman, Mika Wolfall and Delroy Chin took place on April 2024. Subsequently, on the 22nd of November 2024, the final sentencing hearing was conducted at the same court for the other members of the gang. During the trial, the most notable evidence was Delroy Chin. Delroy Chin said he believed he was part of a plot to steal cash and product from the man, not to kidnap him. Jurors were told of Mr. Chin's previous convictions, including for robbery, wounding, perverting the course of justice, and breaches of court orders. Mr. Chin denied entering into agreement to kidnap the man, instead telling jurors, "I believe it involved the theft of Class A product and cash from him. I didn't know who he was. I believe he was in charge of a transfer of large quantities of cash and Class A products using a van. My role was to place trackers underneath the vehicle and find a pattern of behaviour." "Did you place any trackers on the vehicle?" the prosecution asked. "I placed a number of trackers on the vehicle," Delroy Chin answered. "What was the point of putting trackers on vehicles?" the prosecution asked. "You're trying to be covert and get a certain amount of information, trying to find out information, and you're trying to build up a picture," Delroy Chin said. "Find the best place to put them where they become undiscovered. You log the vehicle using a telephone or smartphone, and then it's live." Asked why he didn't tell police what he knew, having been arrested, he said he thought it was preposterous he had been detained on suspicion of kidnap and didn't want to incriminate himself. Mr. Chin said he didn't know co-defendant Sean Freeman prior to the case, but he said after seeing an image of him with big curly hair, he believed he'd seen him with Margot Tua on a number of occasions, but thought it was Tua's girlfriend at the time. Well, that's a bit of a dig. He said he'd known Mika Wolfall for a number of years and met some of the group with him at a pub while watching football. Mr. Chin said he was first asked about getting involved in the plot to steal from the man in early February 2019 by Wolfall and Daniel Lowe. They mentioned they had some information about someone who bought Class A products off in Manchester. He told jurors he, Wolfall, was inquiring because he knew I could obtain trackers. "I used to work in a garage and put them on performance cars, so I knew how to use trackers and how to obtain them. Mika thought I could help by putting trackers on the vehicle and monitoring its movements. Sean Freeman, although he was more involved in planning and providing intelligence, not necessarily present at the lockup during the raid. Sean Freeman was a friend of the victim, regularly playing football with him, as well as luring the victim to Parswood Centre. He also recorded the vehicle registration of the victim in his mobile phone, along with the names of the victims and family members. He sourced the lockup, used to hold the victim, and met with the kidnap team in the days before the actual kidnap, travelling in convoy with their vehicles from the lockup where the victim eventually would be held, on a visit to a pub in Alderley Edge, which was set up as the original drop location for the ransom money. During the sentencing at Manchester Crown Court, Judge Hilary Manley addressed the severity of the crime committed by the 8-member gang, including Freeman and Chin. She described the kidnapping and torture as a targeted, well-planned, highly organised operation. The judge emphasised the premeditated nature of the crime, highlighting the use of GPS trackers and hiring of a lockup for detention and the impersonation of police officers to abduct the victim. Mr. A, the kidnapped victim in court, said it was quite bizarre, but I thought I was getting arrested. They looked like real police officers, and I noticed the same car following me from days before. The man said he was handcuffed before being put in the back of the police car with 2 of the men, while the driver Lowe pretended to make calls to an operator. He said alarm bells started ringing when he knew Stretford didn't have a custody suite and there was no such thing as Clayton Police Station, I became suspicious then. Judge Manley acknowledged the profound and psychological and physical trauma inflicted upon the victim, who was subjected to electric shocks and burns over a 12-hour period. She noted the gang's actions demonstrated a complete disregard for human dignity and life. The judge also pointed out the betrayal of trust, particularly by Freeman, who was a close friend of the victim, and provided critical information that facilitated the kidnapping. Sean Freeman from Manchester was jailed for 9 years, after pleading guilty to conspiracy to kidnap and conspiracy to blackmail. Delroy Chin from Northampton was jailed for 11 years, after pleading guilty to conspiracy to kidnap and conspiracy to blackmail. Micah Wolfall from Northampton was sentenced to 11 years and 3 months, after pleading guilty to conspiracy to kidnap and conspiracy to blackmail. Nicky Barnes from Northampton was jailed for 12 years, after pleading guilty to conspiracy to kidnap and conspiracy to blackmail. Daniel Lowe from Northampton was jailed for 10 years and 6 months, after pleading guilty to conspiracy to kidnap and conspiracy to blackmail. Michael Atua from Manchester was jailed for 10 years and 2 months, after pleading guilty to conspiracy to kidnap and conspiracy to blackmail. Ben Ukaibu from Northampton was jailed for 11 years and 3 months, after pleading guilty to conspiracy to kidnap and conspiracy to blackmail. John Bishop, 31 years old of Northampton, was jailed for 7 years, after pleading guilty to conspiracy to kidnap and conspiracy to blackmail. A 35-year-old man was also sentenced after pleading guilty to conspiracy to kidnap and conspiracy to blackmail. He has since been released from prison. Detective Inspector Gareth Davies of Greater Manchester Police's Major Incident Team said this was a terrifying attack on a man who was held against his will and senselessly tortured. This crime was carefully thought out and planned by this despicable group of offenders, and their behaviour was ruthless and inhumane. The severity of these offences should not be underestimated, and I'd like to thank our Greater Manchester Police officers who have been working tirelessly as part of Operation Survive to put these offenders behind bars where they can take time they need to reflect on their actions. This sentence is very much deserved, and I hope it will act as a warning that this type of criminal behaviour will absolutely not be tolerated on our streets. Mr. A certainly did go through the mill. He recovered from his injuries. Even though the pain and fear he went through, he still testified in court, and in good humour, even through over 12 hours of torture he endured that would break many. How he spotted the Audi following him for several days and didn't seem fazed by it. This seems like a guy, Mr. A, that won't flake easy. What appealed to me about this case is once you're out the criminal underworld, how gossip and buying a new van can drag you straight back in. The betrayal by his friend is low. Okay, I know I shouldn't, but let me tell you. Many years ago, I once got kidnapped by mimes. What they did to me was unspeakable. And back to the conclusion. You did ask me to put these in the comments, you know that, don't you? And so the curtain fell on one of Manchester's darkest and most bizarre dramas. Not the stuff of gritty thrillers, but real-life cautionary tale of betrayal, fake police, and a botched criminal enterprise. The gang armed with GPS trackers and bad decisions thought they could play puppet masters of ransom and terror. But what should have been a sign? If your crew needs a cement mixer to muffle screams, you're not masterminds. You're just mixing up your future with concrete consequences.